the consequences of pride. Secondly, the consequences of apostasy. We're in 9 verses 13 to 17. If pride is thinking that you can do anything without God, apostasy is thinking you can believe anything, whatever you like, irrespective of what God says. It's turning your back on God in what you believe. Verse 13 reminds us that Israel won't come back to God, even when they've been invaded. Message to Judah: if you're invaded, make sure you turn back to God straight away. Instead, there's a problem with what they believe. When the nation split during the time of Solomon's son Rehoboam's reign, the man who took control of the north of Israel was called Jeroboam, and he set up 2 golden calves, one in the north of Israel, one in the south nearer Judah. And they were there for the people to worship. Jeroboam said, "These are your gods. He brought you up out of Israel," absolutely repeating the same mistake that the Israelites had made at the back end of Exodus. This was now their national religion, Israel's national religion. Yes, they kind of paid some kind of lip service to Yahweh, the God of their great-great-grandparents. But really, they thought they could get away with making up what to believe, anything. This is called apostasy. And there were consequences for Israel. Verse 14. So the Lord will cut off from Israel both the head and the tail, both palm branch and reed in a single day. The elders and dignitaries are the head. The prophets who teach lies are the tail. Those who guide this people mislead them, and those who are guided are led astray. Those who've allowed apostasy, the elders and the dignitaries, the movers and shakers of the nation, those who taught it, those who taught error, the prophets, will be cut off in a single day. Being cut off in the Old Testament means being cut off from God's people and sent away. God won't stand for false teaching among his people in his church. He'll hand over the people to their own falsehoods, to lies, because every mouth speaks folly. That's in Israel. The lesson for Judah? Well, you're going that way, says Isaiah. You're on the same path as Israel. Remember chapter 6 and Isaiah's cry? Woe to me! I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Lies are all around in Judah already. Come back to the truth, Judah, says Isaiah, says God through Isaiah, before you too are handed over. Is the church today prone to making up what to believe, prone to melding together different things to believe about God? Well, yes. All sorts of made-up religion is believed, isn't it? Even in the Church of England. The Church of England that's based on the 39 articles of religion which tell us that our faith should be based on the scriptures, which is absolutely right. All sorts of made-up stuff is believed. The Church of England is often referred to as a broad church, isn't it? Which sounds ever so nice, doesn't it? It sounds lovely that we're broad enough to allow anybody in. But actually, that's code for you can believe almost anything you like, as long as you hold to a very small core of things like the existence of God and the importance of Jesus in some way, whichever way you want to make that up. And as long as you do communion right. How can that be right? It's a move away from God and a move away from his word, isn't it? The very word that Isaiah told us to cling to last week, to the testimony. And the churches that continue in false teaching can expect what? To be cut off. to sink into non-existence. Judah was supposed to see Israel's refusal to come back to the faith once taught and the faith which they had received. They're expected to do exactly that. But do you think it happened? What must we do as a church? We must stick to the gospel that we've received, mustn't we? Come thick or thin, never move away from it, ever. Stick firmly to it, even if the wider church shilly-shallies around all sorts of things and plays with fire. Even if that's going on all around us, we will not be moved. We will stand on the promises of our God, because God has called us to be faithful to him. And there's a cost to apostasy, isn't there? A godless people will be handed over to godlessness and will be cut off, sent out of God's people, proving that they're not really God's people at all. That's not us, is it? We will stand firm on the promises that we've received. The consequences of apostasy. Let's take another break, sing again, and we'll come back in a few minutes to think about the remainder of our passage.